minutes. S and I are back with another episode of Is Podcast Ko Kya Naam Do. I almost said Is Pyar Ko Kya Naam Do. I'm so used to that sequence of words. But I hope everyone's doing well. We've been pretty good at sticking to a schedule so far. Let's hope that keeps happening. Yeah, today we have a very exciting episode with, I would say, the best character in IPK. For sure, S's favorite character. I have a lot of thoughts on this episode. I have a lot of thoughts on this character. I don't think this one episode would be enough for it, but we'll at least try to skim the surface of the character today. And with that, S, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. I am going through major web series hangover. I'm not going to give you guys any detail, but what I do is that in my pastime, I like to edit stuff and change stories and tracks to my liking. And I did this for one particular series. And right now, my head is full of that series, so much so that I can recite every single line with the dard and emotion that the characters do. So I am in a very good emotional hangover zone. You have witnessed that live.
All I'm going to say is that look, if I wasn't S's friend already, before I knew that she did this, I would have found out a way to stalk her, like Khushi does Arnav, and become her friend, just so I can watch her edits of certain things. So I'm one happy cookie. No, I watched it. It was amazing. I am sorry that it cannot be distributed widely. All I can say is 4 Lions, hire her. You're making a big mistake by not hiring S, okay? You do not know what you're losing out on. I mean, look, I'm not saying this because she's my friend. The stuff she edits just makes a lot more sense than the original whatever stupidity was happening. So I'm just putting it out there. If anyone's listening, I don't know, hi girl. Anyway, oh shit, I just insulted her show and told her to hire someone else to make it better. This would be great. Sorry, yes, if your future career options were damaged by me.
No.
All right. So anything else you've been doing other than editing stuff and getting lost in your own edits?
You know very well I've been doing nothing apart from that. How have you been doing?
Look, I still have to ask. We're not talking in between ourselves. I have been doing pretty well. It's the weekend right now, actually. We're recording over the weekend, and I always love weekends. I work so I can live, not the other way around. So weekends are a great time. I watched SS Edits yesterday. Great wrap up of a week on a Friday. What did I do today? I haven't really done much other than record the podcast episodes, and once that's done, talk about other shows and characters. You know what? I'm good with that. I'm good with spending my free time in Sapno Ki Duniya because Khushi was right, and Asli Duniya mein sirf dil tootte hai. That's pretty much my week, actually. I work and then I call S, and then we talk about whatever show or character is on our mind. Somehow 5 hours pass most of the time, and then I go to bed and then I wake up and go back to work. It's a pretty good schedule, I think. I don't know about S, but I have a great time.
हमारा भी वही हाल है. So anyways, today's track discussion, in my eyes, one of the most important episodes, because this is what completely changes Arnav and Kushi's life, because this is when we are introduced to, I so wish I could play the background score, but I try a very bad job at.
Oh my god. I mean, it was a great job. I'm cracking up. I was not expecting that.
Daiya ho. That you have to know who we're talking about.
Okay, I think we've lost S for a little bit. Oh my god. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the entry of our. If anyone were to watch it from the beginning, people would have thought he was the hero. So I'd say the presumed hero of the show, Sham Manohar Jha.
Yeah.
And we are also going to be covering a little bit of what happens before Sham's entry and the aftermath of it and everything up until Khushi and Payal moving to Delhi. So, yes, let's start off with you. What didn't you like about this particular track?
What I didn't like? I don't have a bone to pick with this episode because I feel everything that happens over here is justified. Like Garima's fear, Garima yelling on Khushi, like right by now, it's very well established how Garima reacts to a situation where she feels she's a typical patriarchal, typical member of the patriarchal society, naak kat gayi and all of that bullshit. So I'm not at all pissed off or upset about that because the characters behave and react the way that we've been exposed to them as of now.
Mhm.
But there are just, I would say, there are two things that I'm upset in the whole show that comes from here. Is that one, there is no major callback to the fact that what Arnav did was very damaging to Khushi's reputation and her father's reputation. Like the fact that they leave Lucknow and there's no mention of one ever going back to making things right in Lucknow. Like the fact that Khushi leaves, she actually leaves forever. My heart always breaks at the thought because there is some damages that happen from his release of the press footage, and I think that is one thing that bugs me. That I wish instead of whatever crap we got at this last half of not the last, I mean the last 10 20 episodes of IPQ, we just got focus on these things
Mhm.
because this was Khushi's individual life that got destroyed. And okay, not entirely up to Arnav, but the fact is that every action had consequences here and there. So this is one thing over there that I always have a bone to pick with. And another thing is that the whole family does not realize how Sham met Khushi. That is because Khushi was being harassed midway because of what happened.
You mean Arnav's family?
Yeah, the whole of the Raizadas, I mean, they are Khushi's family too, but whole of like the
No,
Raizadas and
I just
Arnav
meant like
did
the
not.
Guptas know.
Yeah, only the Guptas. Like, uh, none of the Raizadas ever learned that this was
Mhm.
how Sham met Khushi, that she was being harassed because of the footage that Arnav released. And also, I think the last thing that I can pick with this, see, nothing is there to do with this episode, but it's just to the in the future is that I don't know if Sham had always kept an eye on Khushi and he found this as an opportunity to get hold of her, or if he had hired the goons to play hero.
Mhm.
This is a question that will bug me until and unless I can meet Gautam ji and Gul ji and ask them कि आप दोनों ने क्या सोचा था? Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, they're senior than me, man. I can't just call them Gul and Gautam. Don't give guys, she gave me a look like Gulji, and I'm like, yeah, she's at least 10 years older than me. And she's very senior in this field of entertainment. So it's not right to just call a person by their name. Parvarish, guys, parvarish.
Okay. As tells me, okay, I I think I'm too used to my like she called me American yesterday for whatever reason. I think I'm proving that point now because I was like, "Go, got them!" Like, मेरी बचपन के दोस्त. Anyway, I agree with everything that S said. A couple of things I'll pick on though in terms of the tracks situation. I think they needed to do this because I don't know how else they could have done it. But I do have uh, a slight issue with the reality of how people are. Sorry, we just finished recording Halahal review, by the way. So I'm just like, life is unfair, everything is bullshit, and then you die mood. And I watched the media scene where Kushi goes to one. I don't know what she was hoping to achieve. Like I don't know what she thought would happen other than them shoving a microphone in her face and recording her reaction for their next night's episode. I think Payal was more knowledgeable because she was shown to be a bit naive, maybe in that situation of like, I don't know what she was hoping for going there. And the fact that like she gave this speech about like, will you let someone come into Lucknow and do this to your woman, sort of a thing. She gives this passionate speech and everyone feels ashamed and guilty. And then they give out the information about Arnav being the one to release the tapes. That bit felt very like, yeah, this is an Indian TV show. Okay, I didn't get that feeling until that point. And then I watched that scene and I was like, no one doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Yes, yes.
Yes. I know why this scene exists because this is a very typical scene that exists in almost every ITV where the heroine will make an emotional appeal, and then whatever powerful person they're appealing to will melt because the heroine has said something nice. But I also wish Khushi said something logical, because I'm like, if anyone thinks they know how journalism works, especially if you're in India, for anything related to celebrities, guys, you just gotta switch on your television or your laptops to see what a mess they make of people's lives. So when Kushi goes on screen and she says this, and I'm like, first of all, someone will be recording, like someone will be telecasting this.
Yeah, so I watched a bit of this episode in preparation for the podcast. I've never prepared this much even for my exams. But basically what happens is she starts giving the speech of like up as like, you know, what kind of people are you? You're laughing at us, and you've aired this whole thing about, you know, someone came into Lucknow and um
I think basically she said that someone outsider, an outsider came to Lucknow and disrespected your daughter.
yeah, and you're letting him do it. And then the guy who's holding the camera recording it up until that point like puts it down. And I was like, yeah, no one in the media is doing that. Like maybe they will watch this later and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't release it. Maybe there would be that moment potentially. I don't even believe in that much. Uh, I just think they'll take advantage of this is something that would get ratings, so they would air it. So it felt a bit fake to me.
And to be very honest, like I know that the main aim right now is to create more animosity between Arnav and Kushi. So honestly, like if they did want to show that some media person's heart like was melted after what happened, like you know that it is not fair, that it's not about an outsider. It's not that a Lucknowi has hak to disrespect a Lucknowi. But I think they would be like, yeah, we are making life hell for a normal woman. I would have imagined to just go in line that the one person would have been like, ma'am, let us allow us to broadcast this on the channel. Let people get to know that what happened was not your mistake.
I think if anything, they would have been like, do you want to share your side of things?
Absolutely. And imagine Arnav's face. If he's like this, and then the very next day the girl is doing this and she's getting sympathy votes, like by now, then you would be convinced that this woman is a player.
I have this track in mind where imagine Kushi like this thing being aired and I don't know, AR getting bad rep, like bad PR, and some there being an effect on the business. And you know, maybe that's how the family gets to find out. Or like imagine Akash, because I have this headcanon that Akash works in finance because there's these scenes where he's typing on a spreadsheet and you know, spreadsheet equals finance in my head. And I'm like, Akash going to Arnav and being like, do you understand what you're doing? Like, you might have a personal vendetta against this girl, but it's affecting the business. And I never thought of you as someone who would let someone get to you that much. Like, there could have been so much potential in this track too.
Like this one affecting AR's goodwill.
Yeah.
If any big Indian brand with public stocks and public goodwill and image publishes like this kind of a statement, and then someone comes, and you see what's happening in the entertainment industry right now, like even if one single article is published that, hey, you know what, this particular person actually harassed me, and if a media person actually wanted to help Khushi, they wouldn't stop recording it. They would actually be like, Khushi, this world is not the way you think. If you want things to be better, like they would help them in their expertise. They would be like, if you want things to get better, you know what, give it to us, we'll help you. We'll put this out, and if anyone gets to know that the CEO of the company or the MD of the company has harassed a woman falsely and been responsible for the release of the tapes that were not supposed to be released, it would have affected AR's goodwill more. And to be honest, Arnav and Khushi's animosity would have been even more real.
Yeah. Or, I mean, instead of all of this, one way they could have let it slip or whatever that Arnav is responsible for it could have been that sources at AR say XYZ. Even if it doesn't like, even if Kushi doesn't know that it came straight from ASR, she'd be like, oh, aapki biradri, or whatever. She keeps saying the dialogue of like, I think this is a Hindi saying. It's also in my language, but it's Yadha Raja Tada Praja. Had like I think Kushi would have latched onto that to build on the animosity as well. Even if she doesn't realize, like, I didn't think they needed this scene, is all I'm saying.
The scene actually could have really given 4 or 5 episodes worth more of like some good content. Like Kushi
Yeah.
would have to leave for Delhi, but Kushi probably wouldn't have realized the wildfire she left off with her
Hmm.
statement in public, given how innocent she is. Like, I would expect a female journalist would be helping Kushi out, like a good extra would help Kushi out. And if Kushi's like, who would have done this? And I wish Kushi would have been like, but why would the owner, like, who would release this? And I wish someone over there, because I always love the idea of women helping other women. I wish someone would have told Kushi that don't be so naive. There's only one person who has the power to do this.
Yeah, or like it could have been done this way, like you're saying. There could have been an angle of like Kushi also using the media to share her side of things, and it turning into this whole mess. And then once that's done, maybe someone could, an anchor or a person on the set could have pulled her aside and been like, I know you came here to find out who shared like how this happened, and please don't tell anyone. I'll lose my job. But it actually came from Arnav Singh Raizada. Like, it wasn't. We didn't have the footage. He sent it, so I don't know what happened, but that's how we got it. They could have I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want to spend that much time on it, which fair enough. But I also think this scene was kind of like pulled me out of my watch. Like, it just gave me too much like a, unrealistic, like dramatic, yeah, vibes.
Absolutely. I think that would have been amazing because I'm just like, you want to create more drama, you had a perfect opening. You have that. And and then Kushi leaves Lucknow because of what happens, right? And imagine Arnav being like, I want to track this woman down. She like destroyed my company. And they're like, she's not in Lucknow.
Yeah.
And Arnav is like, this is a professional. This is a professional.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they were building up to like be Kushi trying to sabotage Arnav or the AR essentially, imagine Kushi like doing something that would tank AR's PR. AR's PR is very weird to say, but like imagine Kushi doing something to impact the PR of AR designs, whatever, and Arnav, like to Arnav, that would prove the point. And then the next time Kushi shows up, the anger would be like at its peak because he's convinced. He has proof now that she's trying to sabotage his company.
Yep.
So yeah, that was the one thing that I didn't love in this track. And now that we have beaten that to death, what about this episode did you like?
कहाँ से शुरू करूँ यार? There is so much I like about Kushi over here. Let me begin with how intelligent Kushi is. She's smart as heck. Like when she goes out into the market, the way she deals with that shopkeeper who gives his unasked, unsolicited advice about dowry and everything, and Kushi just slaps him shut. And Kushi was very intelligent in mathematics. I have no idea where that went, but she's like took one look at the paper and she's like, "आपकी गोल गोल बातों में आपने एक गोला ज़्यादा लगा दिया." I'm like, Kushi, you sass queen. That was amazing.
Yeah, I think Kushi's math also eloped with Arnav, not Arnav, Akash and Payal. Um, everything good with the show just left. But in that scene, my favorite part of that scene is Garma holds on to Kushi's hand when initially the shopkeeper is, it's saying that all that stupid shit, and then when he goes on saying it, at one point Garima just lets Kushi's hand go in silent permission, like she's like, "Do your worst," kind of a thing. And I love that scene because Kushi's someone who would, if you say something about her family, she would jump in and like back you if possible verbally. And I love that equation between Garima and Kushi there. I found really nice.
Yeah, very well done. Very bright. That is the scene where I'm like, Kushi Kumari Gupta, I'm in love with you. You are fantastic. Like, that's when I realized that I am on Kushi's side. I love it. And again, I love Kushi and Garima's fight. Because in that scene you would be scared if gundas like just like jump on you din dahare and they're like Are kahan ja rahi ho? Like that was very realistically written. Like I'm like ouch,
Mm-hmm.
that is realistic. Before coming to my favorite character, I loved Anjali and Arnav's conversation. I think in their earlier conversation, their age gap was very well established. In the flashback, we get to see Anjali the way she is. Like there's been no significant change on her face, and but Arnav seems to have grown like at least several years between that. So I think we can come to the conclusion that Arnav and Anjali have a substantial age gap, and I think they maintain that in the first few episodes, especially over here. Like Arnav was like, Didi, tu aap kya kar rahi hai yahan pe? And she's like, shut up, let me put the tilak. And when the other person tries to enter the office, Anjali's like, क्या हमें अपने भाई के साथ 2 मिनट मिल सकता है? And the other like officer, not officer, the office person is like, okay, I'm noping out of the situation. So I think they almost diminish the age gap as the episodes progress. But over here, I really love their conversation because this is one thing that starts that we can see from here is that Anjali babies Arnav like a mother, and then she gets some leeway, she gets some time, and that's when she asks some hard hitting questions. And I think that is what happens over here is that she like gives him a tilak, she babies him, and then she's like, "Did you think twice before the press release? Have you thought what would happen to that girl?" The reason why I find this very important is because Anjali is a character. This is my favorite Anjali, who reminds Arnav on on being accountable for his actions. And obviously, I hate the fact that Arnav is like soch ke hi to kiya tha, but I think this is what I miss the most is that Anjali holding Arnav accountable for everything that he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think she also asked some heart-hitting questions because she's like, "It looks like you found a bride for yourself." So also foreshadowing there. I think I was maybe not up to par on Indian TV standard foreshadowing thing because up until this point, today's watch actually, I thought she was talking about Lavanya because he had a girlfriend. I was like, oh, maybe she was talking about Lavanya being his potential bride. And then today I was listening to it, I was like, nee, because she was in a bridal gear. So I think Anjali was like indicating that, oh, there was, if you were to go by page 3 news, you found a bride for yourself. So you can call me a shoe bride for that one. I think Anjali tends to use the sandwich method very well. I know Arnav is the one running an office, but she gives this feedback technique. Like she's very good at it. She says something silly and then she asks him the hard questions and then she goes back to being silly so that it's not like it's smooths things over before she leaves kind of a situation. And I think for a long time she was who played Arnav's conscience. So when you lost that character after a little bit, as the episodes progressed, like I felt like I lost that character who questioned Arnav on what he did. Like there was no one in the show that did that after a certain point, and I think that like they should have replaced it with someone, maybe Akash, if they had built that relationship up more with Arnav, where he was like, "Is everything okay?" Akash tries once after the marriage happens, where he's like, in a marriage these things happen, like fights tend to happen, and Arnav's like, "Yeah, how long have you been married?" And then it gets shut down, and Akash never speaks up again. So yeah, like they needed a character who would take Anjali's place once that was left open. I also picked up on the fact that like Anjali is also someone who's used to getting her way, especially in Arnav's office in his house. That's also established. And the final thing I'll say, no, couple of things. Once again, Anjali's character. There was nuances to that character that were never explored because Arnav asked like, "Jijaji ka hai?" Like instead of answering the question, she just like, "It's only been 2 years since I've been married, and you're already trying to kick me out of your house." Like she never answers the question of where Jijaji is. So there's that. I think Arna's back in Delhi by this point because she says your office is being renovated. And the final thing I'll say about Anjali is that you kind of see, I like the fact that this is right after the whole Darga thing happens because you see that Khushi is the exception when it comes to Arnav treating someone this way because of beliefs or whatever. Because Anjali's like doing whole arti, like putting tilak on his forehead, and he just suffers through it. He's not like, I mean, he cribs about kaise bhagwan hote hai jise पूछना होता है or something? Like, why would you need to ask your God for anything? I give out more wishes in a boardroom meeting than he does, and all of that. Like, but he never belittles her belief, or he never insults her for. I mean, uski di hai, mujhe pata hai, but still, yeah, he never disrespects her belief. And with Khushi, he gets super offended when she tells him what should be. Although I do also think that Anjali doesn't push her own beliefs on him either. She does certain things, like the ritualistic things she does, but she's never like, oh Chote, you're characterless for not believing in God. That doesn't happen. So I think there's a mutual respect there of their, what each other tend to believe, which is really nice. But Kushi's gotten under his skin somehow, and she's the exception to how he treats people almost. Not saying this to give him any brownie points, because he's truly an asshole in this episode, and I would have, I don't know, pushed him off the terrace when he said, release the tapes. But I mean, if I was Rajesh, he would have, like, the news the next day, the released news would not have been that a girl fell into Arnav Singh Raizada's arms. It would have been that Arnav Singh Raizada fell off the roof of Sheesh Mahal under mysterious circumstances. And then, it's very easy to spin a conspiracy theory around a bungalow that's haunted, etc., etc. I'm building an alibi for myself here.
Okay. I have to interrupt this
Huh.
before this turns out from a track discussion to a carefully planned murder. Like, I think this very well leads me to my very next point, which is the introduction of Snake Manure Jha, who should have that's his name. That's what SMJ stands for. And he should have referred to Rid's 101 ways to get rid of Arnav Singh Raizada from episode 1. If only he had known you existed, Rids. You're like his god.
I would no Sham ki bhi maut ho jati. So he didn't need, like, if he came to me for advice on how to kill Arnav or Anjali, Arnav maybe I would have helped and then off Sham, but Anjali, nay. Anjali is nice. I would never help Sham. Like,
Sham would take your head to kill Arnav.
How?
Instead of his botched kidnapping plan, that terrace wala idea you gave was very doable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
insulted me.
Okay, Baba. Now let us get into the introduction of my really favorite character. I am going to try singing that song again, because
Oh no.
Oh, Daiya, ho.
I want to jump off that roof.
What?
I'm sorry.
That was really good, okay?
No. Okay, Shree's singing is wonderful. I am just not sure I'm ready for her to start humming Daiya Ho at me like every day, because she has a very bad habit of picking songs I don't understand and starting off her day with the humming. And I call her, and then she continues to hum, and then it gets stuck in my head. I don't want Daiya Ho stuck in my head, is the point of this.
But yeah, I think, all right, pushing all tomfoolery aside, I think one thing I really loved about Sham's entry is that I did not have a single bit of idea of who this character was. Because Khushi has this blind love towards Salman Khan, and he enters exactly like Salman Khan. With the slow footsteps, the Firoza on his wrist, the great one-liners, and then the flying kicks and punches. And I'm like, this is Khushi's dream man who has come to life. Which also makes me feel that probably Sham was spying on Khushi's likes and dislikes and hired the goons and introduced himself as a Salman Khan-esque figure. And one of the things what I really like in the show is that, like, once Sham's truth is revealed, Khushi's obsession with, like, Salman Khan dies an instant death. But yeah, I think I really like it that what if the man who you met and you hated him is a soulmate, but the man who appears like the hero of your dreams is a villain? You can never judge anyone by how they appear, and I think Sham Manohar Jha was such a good example of that. Like, genuinely, he's my favorite character because he has one of the best character arcs. I mean, the second half of his character was treated rather comically with all the overexposure, but I think his introduction is one of my very favorites because the way Sham is introduced in IPK is the way Man Singh Khurana is introduced in Geet. So Geet is running away from a set of goons and she crashes into Man, and then we get a look of Man's eyes and his biceps, and he fights the gundas off and he saves Geet. with no expectation in return. And so when you watch this, and like, Sham's like deep set of eyes, and with his Firoza and his epic one liners, like kicking people off, giving respect to Babuji, you'd almost ship them. You'd be like, yeah, this guy is so right. He's so nice. He's so sweet. That is one of my favorite introduction of of an antagonist, because I have no idea that he'd be one. And I really loved the way Sham speaks over here up until, I think Sham's monologuing is what kind of killed his character. But like from now on, the one thing I really loved about Sham is that his dialogues are very carefully thought out. So every single line he said held another meaning. And it's a meaning that you can enjoy when you're rewatching the show. And you're like, oh my god, such good writing, especially when we discussed about the news media report, news media section, where Kushi goes to the news agency and speaks to them, and then she comes back, and when she's in the mandir, and Sham is like, she's like, Sham ji, aap yahan? And he's like, ha, hum to chal rahe the, par darshan ho gaye. And which literally translate that, oh, I was walking but I saw. Like Kushi gives him a what, and he's like, Devi Maiya ke. If I didn't even know who Sham was, there was just something in that dialogue, and that's what he keeps on saying, that aapse jo milna tha. And Kushi's like, what? To give you your Babuji's wallet? Like these little pauses, and that his words have like a hint of something else, that when you rewatch it you realize that he's laying out a trap. And the way he takes information out of Kushi's mouth, that Arey, don't insult Delhi like this. Oh, you're all alone in Delhi. And Kushi is just spilling everything, and I'm like, Kushi, I'm going to hit you with the balin, with the same balin that Buaji has, because stranger danger. But that's what, like him being a Lucknowi, he takes full advantage of the fact that Lucknowis are often very polite and they love to talk. And he uses that to garner, like now if you see it, you see he's working so intelligently because he's garnering all information about Kushi. He knows that her father is not going with her. He knows that it's three lonely women. She also tells him which place they're living in. So he gets full information about her. And I'm like, this is such a smart character.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the good fortune of watching the show from the beginning and buying into Sham being a hero. I had already known who he is when I watched these scenes. But I would say, like, if you watch the show for the first time and don't know what his character is, what's happening, like, if you see him as the hero, which is how he's introduced, his lines are like flirting. He's being like she was saying, his dialogues are very like intelligent in the sense that he could like, because I don't know yet, right? Like if you're watching this the scene or the show for the first time, you don't know that Sham's a creep. So you'd be like, maybe if Kushi gives an indication that she isn't appreciative of this, he would back off. But he does have an interest and he's expressing it. That's how I would see it. But it has a different meaning when you go back to watch it, because then you're like, fuck, he was married. Like he knows exactly what he was doing in that scene, and he's laying down the trap, and Kushi's falling into it like perfectly. If Kushi had been a little bit more like Arnav, and if Arnav had been a little bit more like Kushi, their story would have not had as many obstacles as it had.
Arnav meets Kushi coincidentally so many times, and he's like, she's planning it, she's planning it, she's planning it, but she's not. And Kushi meets Sham so many times, and she's like, "Arey ho jata hai, ho jata hai." And I'm like, "No, no, no, Kushi, he's planning it, he's planning it, ho nahi raha hai." I mean, I think that was so
Yeah.
smart. Yeah, no, I think Sham is very intelligently written. And before I go further into that, few things that I liked from this episode is that there's a good callback that over here, as usual, I'm not upset at what Garima says, because she somehow puts it to be Kushi's fault that they were harassed in the market, and I'm like, I don't expect anything better from you, Garima, at this point. And Shashi's also upset, but the good thing I like about this is that there's a callback from the parents' perspective on the situation, which is much later into the show, when Shashi's like, I have my full faith in my daughter and I want her to go and work, because after all, we have punished them for a mistake that was not theirs. And that was like one thing I'm like, Shashi, extra hearts to you. And another very important thing is that we again see the extra, the eternal extra. I will attach a photograph of him, Sastrisi. This extra has been existing when Arnav was 14 years old. I don't know if he's Devi Maya in disguise.
Very well could be.
I like that about the show.
That there's Devi Maya in secret.
ये हर जगह में
Huh.
है.
I
He
think
is not missed any important episode. He's in every important episode.
he's either the guy who delivers the takeout that Arnav orders when he's at the Gupta house, or the groceries or something. I don't remember which one it is, but he's there. He's in everything. Like you watch any scene where there's extras, he's there. He's in the wedding preparations for Preeto. Like, yeah, he is Devi Maya. He's everywhere. Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to just add. I talked S's ear off about this characteristic in Khushi, and I was watching this episode, and she does this here, and I'm like, oh, this is where she learned it. Khushi has a tendency to like blame herself outwardly, where she's like, this is all mine, even when situations aren't her fault, and maybe somewhere in her heart she knows that. She does tend to like say that I'm it's all my fault that everything's happening. It's like, it is, I'm to blame, etc., etc. And Pyle is so quick to say, Kushi, you didn't do anything, it just happened. Like, you went to do something right and things kind of turned into a mess. But given that the situation is this, we do need to leave because it can turn into a bigger issue. But Pyle's very quick to shut Kushi down when she's being self-recriminating. You see this pattern happen so many times with Arnav, and Arnav does not react like Payal does. I think Kushi hopes that, someone else will tell her that it's not her fault sometimes, and Arnav doesn't do it. And I always found it fascinating, but I didn't realize that, they had established this with her, with Kushi's own family before this. And I was like, oh, this happens. And this is why she does this all the time. So that was really nice to see, that consistency. The other thing I just say, even though I hated the media sequence, I do like that they're starting to show that Kushi is someone who, even when she's afraid, she doesn't back down from doing something. She's fearful, but she still does what she needs, what she thinks she should do. She doesn't let her fear stop her. And I think that's like, she learns to see the world as it is a little bit later when she's in Delhi, and she has to deal with Arnav Singh Raizada and his 1001 issues. But I think I I like the fact that you're seeing that Kushi was always the kind who would face her fears. It's just that she's toughened, like her outer shell was toughened a bit because of her dealings with Arnav. So it's not that he teaches her to be stronger, it's just that he teaches her to see the world a little more, and that there's grace in the world, not everyone's like a good person. Okay, so we're going to go into, I have held back so much when talking about Sham because we have a point of focus today, which would be all about Sham Manohar Jha. And S, I'll let you go first because, and once again, him being your favorite character, I think it's only right. So what do you have to say about Sham?
I think Abbas is such a good actor. I'll have to put it out there. Like, they do a massive injustice by giving him so many useless monologues that kind of break down. Because I was genuinely scared of Sham when I did not know his motives. And I think Abbas is so nice because his eyes, he has this ability to let his eyes have this distant look, which makes you feel like he's thinking something else, but he's saying something else. Like when he saves Kushi from all of that, and then he gives this little look, and there's this wonderful background score, by the way, lovely background scoring. There's this music that plays, and he looks at Kushi, and it's not that he falls in love, but it's kind of like he's memorizing her face, and he's very attracted by what he sees. And I'm like, there is something there is something that happens over there, but not like the Arnav Khushi wala something. There is something that Khushi is aware that she's being watched, as opposed to Arnav is looking at her. Other thing about Sham is like, if we had not known Sham to be a complete villain right until the terrace scene, that impact would have hit all of us. Like if we were convinced that Sham was forced to marry Khushi because of Buaji, with his, like, his double meaning words and the way he presents. Like, if we only kept on seeing kept on seeing Sham only from Arnav and Khushi's perspectives, from this point on, as you know, like from Arnav's perspective, we get to know a few episodes later that there's a Jijaji who Arnav adores, and who in turn adores the whole family. And then from Khushi, there's this really nice friend who's kind of the only person who talks for her in the house apart from Payal. And then if we all got to see on that terrace night that no, Sham has been planning everything, I think that we would have been able to sympathize with Khushi and with Arnav, both of them instantly. Because I think the beauty of Sham, I would always recommend everyone to watch Sham in these few episodes, because he's simply wonderful to watch. He's mysterious, he's charismatic, and there's something about him that unnerves you. You know, when you meet a good person in your life, but you're like, kuch to garbar hai is insaan mein. Despite him being a completely nice person, I think Sham really fit the bill when it came to
Yep,
that.
I agree 100%. Like, I even took it a step further and I was saying that they shouldn't have showed us Sham. Like, just we should have heard about this person existing. And then on the turn, like, because I meant more of like the Tej episode reveal. Like, if that didn't happen and we just kept hearing about Jijaji who's Sham, like, all of that, even though you don't, I guess you wouldn't get so many things with Anjali in that case. But like, imagine just discovering on like when Kushi discovers that Sham is Sham, if that's when you realize it too, it has a different, like, and then like you don't listen, there's no monologues or anything, you don't know Sham's motivations, you don't know what's happening. Maybe Sham just wants to get away from, who wouldn't want to get away from Raizala mansion once in a while? Maybe that's why he's a paying guest in Buaji's house, and then Buaji's like, nahi, mujhe iski shadi karwani hai. And Sham's like, oh fuck, I got stuck. Like, you could have done a thing where you create sympathy for all the characters involved, and then like on the night of the terrace scene, he's like, no, this was my plan, like I set these things in motion, and this was my plan all along. And uh, it also makes sense that he would take that opportunity to reveal his motives, and how much he quote unquote loves, obsesses over Kushi, because he can see that she's slipping away, and he's like, I cannot pretend to not be interested anymore because she's clearly showing interest in Arnav. Like, that's a point where it would make sense for him to come out and reveal his motives. Setting that aside, that's far in the future, but Sham's character here, I just, okay, the music is really, really good, because when he enters, you get a hero's entry. That music that S has so helpfully provided to us is something that, like she said, Salman Khan would walk out as an entry in a movie, and they set him up as that. They set him up as Kushi's, like, if Kushi were to imagine what her ideal husband would be like without ever encountering Arnav and, like, having something happen in her heart or mind, I don't know where lust resides, but that's like, if without having that awareness of another person, if Sham was the first person she sees, maybe he, like, if she imagines what her husband would be like, that's how it would be, like, someone who's dramatic, someone who has great dialogues, who would fight off goons for her. I almost feel like Sham and the goons rehearsed it, because the one liners are so perfect. Although I don't know how he could have done that, given that the tape was released and Sham showed up right away. I'm also almost sure he sets up the, I don't know, I get a sense that, like, he creates a circumstance where he can play the hero, but then that would bring up the question of, like, I can see either point, or I can counter either point. Like, if Sham sets up the circumstance where he gets a chance to play the hero, it couldn't have happened right then. Like, he would have needed to have been not following Kushi or seen Kushi somewhere else. Maybe he saw Kushi the same night Arnav did. That would give him a couple of days to, like, create circumstances that might, maybe he has spies in AR, I don't know. Or the alternative is that, coincidence, like, he was in Lucknow for whatever reason, and he's like, I just want there's so much about this man that's a mystery, because like is it a coincidence that the tapes were released, he saw that happened, or maybe he didn't even know about the tapes, he just saw, maybe he was a good person in some corner of his heart, he was saving them for the right reasons, but he sees Khushi and he is intrigued. That is also a possibility. There's so many possibilities for his entry scene, and we never find out what happens. As you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I do have thoughts on this because how and when he's attracted to Kushi, not really sure. Because we are made to believe that he does not realize that Kushi is being harassed. He's just seeing someone is being harassed and he slaps everyone. And then when he gives the dupatta and looks at Kushi, he's like, Tote ur gaye. But up until that point, what happens is that he is in Lucknow, but no one in his family knows. That is, Anjali does not know, Arnav does not know that he's in Lucknow. So I'm like, why is Sham in Lucknow? Because Arnav asks the at least like twice, right?
Yeah, I mean, it at least establishes the fact that he's secretive. Anjali doesn't really know his whereabouts. Arnav doesn't really know his whereabouts. Like he is, I would, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have so many theories in my head. Did Sham realize that, something's happening in Lucknow and that's why he was there? Or did he have other affairs or other unsavory business that he was conducting in Lucknow and he didn't want the family to know? Because it is established that he goes on like tours or trips or whatever. And what tours does a lawyer go on? I don't like, I cannot believe Arnav, who is apparently Harvard educated, although I question it. I think that Dadi was right. He was Haridwar educated. Now, I'm not dissing Haridwar University. I'm just saying, Harvard University carries a certain weight to it, right or wrong. And the fact that his Jijaji, who's a lawyer, is going on tours, I'm like, yeah, tours. He's not an entertainer.
I so wish they just gave Sham another job.
The one situation where I can see travel happening a lot, if he was a corporate lawyer, in which case you would travel to make deals and do due diligence and all of that. So it is potential, it's possible that that's what he was, but then he's like, I came here to do like pension thing for like later on. I don't know, they just said lawyer and then forgot about it, so there is
I
that.
thought he was a civil.
That's what I thought, but a civil lawyer wouldn't
Yeah,
travel.
exactly. So it's like Sham itself is mystery. So his job also would be mysterious. But I think one thing that people think that whatever Sham did was only because of Kushi is what I find a bit weird. I always felt that Sham was up to something. Only because long before Kushi becomes a solidified presence in Sham's life, it's been shown that Sham has always been missing
Hmm.
in the marriage, like in the 2 years before, because 2 years before that, Kushi is minor technically in the show. If you're going by, she's 18 when everything started. She's a minor, and until unless there's a very creepy backstory, Sham does not know Kushi. But even then, he's been missing at house. Like it's very well established that it's like, oh, Damaji abhi nahi aaye, Damaji abhi bhi, like he's still doing this or he still is missing. Like there are things like that that make you feel that there has always been something wrong with Sham, and then upon Kushi's arrival, that just like bursts open.
I definitely agree. I think Kushi is someone that made Sham crossed a line when it came to Kushi, in that he risked getting found out. He like, I don't know what his end plan was. I don't think he was ever prepared for. He was either super delusional when it came to Kushi and her love for him, or he was never planning long term. Because I just didn't understand where he thought it would end up and how he could have maintained whatever it was that he hoped to achieve. I mean, he couldn't even handle getting a phone call from Anjali while he was at the Gupta house. I don't know how he thought he would maintain two families. But you know what I'd love? I would love spin-off, like a mini series about Sham's background, like his motivations, his childhood, how he grew up. We don't know anything about his family, if one exists or not. I'm led to believe that he's an orphan or he doesn't have a family, but he lied about everything else, so he might have lied about this. Maybe he knew Kushi. He's from Lucknow. Maybe Kushi was like, he watched her from a distance for a while, or there could be a creepy background thing there. Like, Sham's character would be so great to dig into. I know they turned him into a caricature later on, but the beginnings of the character were very well established. So I'd love to know how the first scene came to be.
honestly, that is the one question I always want to ask the creators, that what do you think about Sham? Because you can't just, like, a character does not come out of thin air, right? There was something about him. I think they had the makings of a great villain. A villain who is polite, soft, gentle, but can scare the living daylights out of you.
Yeah, I was afraid of what Sham was capable of until he started monologuing. And then I was like, I mean, you're telling me everything you're planning to do, so there's no suspense. I'm not afraid of like what else could happen. I don't know much about filmmaking. That's Shree's department, but I can, I think, say that I know a little bit about character development because I write. And I think anytime you leave a character, an antagonist, what they're planning to do, why they're doing certain things, even up to the imagination, that's always worse than anything you can write. Like people can come up with the worst stuff in their own imagination. You cannot match it. And it's also, I don't know, I geek out when I talk about writing. But the one thing is that when you leave that piece of information up to imagination, each person has their own fears and they fill in that blank with those fears so that you build up the antagonist in their mind differently rather than you saying, oh, he will, I don't know, push her off a cliff. That's like maybe a few people's fear, but not everyone will imagine that. Like people wouldn't believe that. So I wish they had kept Sham's character as mysterious as it started out.
I mean, absolutely, because up until that time, we were still on a good hangover of all the Kamalikas and female villains with like bindis as long as their names, and with all like, I am going to steal this guy from this woman, and having no ambition in life, to this really layered, nuanced character who's a psychopath. I don't know if he's a psychopath or not, but I would classify him as that, because these are the kind of people you meet in your daily life, and these are the kind of people who can cause intense damage. So I was very disappointed with the way Sham's character deteriorated, because honestly, trust me when I say he was the spine of the show. A lot of his deeds, like a lot of Arnav and Khushi's life is directly affected by what he did. So I really wish that he was a man who only spoke really less, and then his actions created like bombards everywhere. Like if there's anything I could do with the show, I would I would just edit out all of Sham's monologues.
And she could, because she knows how to edit, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode. I think that's a good point for us to wrap up this episode. There's so much to talk about with Sham. We will keep revisiting his character as we go along with this podcast. But for now, that's all for this episode. I think, as we mentioned, we love a lot about it. There's a little to be unhappy with, which we talked over. But for the next episode, we'll be covering like Kushi and Payal's move to Delhi, Lavanya's entry. My favorite character, Lavanya and NK are my favorite characters. No one can change my mind.
Married. They're married, guys. Lavanya and NK are married.
Excuse me, NK's married to me. What are you
I know. I'm just saying, in this fic world, there's a very good reason why NK is married to you. Okay, that's an inside joke, guys. But I'm just saying, NK and R are kind of made for each other. But apart from that, NK and Lavanya are married, and we are getting this beautiful entry of our dimpled beauty, Lavanya Kashyap, and we obviously have the car accident where we have two legendary dialogues. Aap, tum, ahaha, the best.
I mean, the episode must end how it began, with Shree's reenactment of something related to IPK. So I think that's a great point to end this show. Bye for now. We will see you soon with something.
Bye.